We're all familiar with the famous words of Shlomo HaMelech, Chochmat Nashim Banta Beita. It is dafka, the unique role of a woman, the unique chochma of a woman that builds what we call the bait, that builds her home, that builds the Jewish home. Interestingly enough, we find in different places in Torah that when Torah is referring to a makom of Torah, a place of limud HaTorah, it refers to it in the text of a bait or an ohel, a place which is closed off into four walls. The first example, which is brought down in Bereshis Chaf Hei, Chaf Zayin, when we talk about Yaakov Avinu, who's known as the Amud HaTorah, the Torah calls him Ishtam Yoshev Ohalim. Yoshev Ohalim, he's the one who sits in the ohel. The ohel is referring to a home. We see again later on in Bamidbar, Chavdalid Hey, where Bilam is being Mishabeach Klal Yisrael in his Nevuah. And what does he say? Matovu Ohalecha Yaakov, Mishkenotecha Yisrael. The Targum Yonatan says over there, interestingly enough, Shenitkavein leshabeach et limud haTorah bebatei midrashot. That Bilam Harasha is referring to dafka, the limud haTorah of Klal Yisrael, that's done in a bait, in a base medrash. In Devarim, Lamed Gimel Yudches, we see that Moshe Rabbeinu is mishabeach, the special partnership between Zvulun and Yisachar. What does it say over there? Yismach Zvulun b'tzeitcha, v'Yisachar be'ohalecha. Zvulun, who's the one who's being mefarnes, who goes out to bring parnasa, he's Yismach Zvulun b'tzeitcha, he goes out. But Yisachar, he's the one who's being osek batorah, be'ohalecha. He's sitting in the ohel. He's sitting in the home. We see also in Bereshis Memvav Chavches, when Yaakov goes down to Mitzrayim, he sends Yehuda before him, as it says over there, lehorot lefanav. He sends him down in order to, so to speak, teach Torah before he even comes. Rashi says over there, letakein lo beit Talmud, that he sends Yehuda down to already build a bait, to build a home where Torah is going to be taught from. Shemisham tetzei hora'ah, because only from there, from a bait, can Torah come out. Dafka, the security of a home, the four walls that secure us from the outside, are what allow Torah to be taught. There's no doubt, girls, that every day, every moment here in Mechlala is a true investment for the future binyan adei ad, for the future bait ne'eman. Every investment in your growth, in your Torah perspective, your Yirah Shamayim, your Chashivas HaTorah, your Midos, your Bein Adam Lamakom, Bein Adam L'Chavero, all of your Kinyanim HaRuchanim that Be'ezrat Hashem you're all accomplishing this year, are already now building those walls, those four walls, for that bait of yours, for that bait ne'eman, that Be'ezrat Hashem each and every one of you are going to build, umisham tetzei Torah. And from that home, a home of four secure walls, true Torah is going to come forth from. Linda Pinsky, Zahava Rivka, Bat Gedalia V'Shulamit Alea HaShalom, may not have been zochet to build a home in this world. But as the Torah tells us about Moshe and Aharon, when it says in Bamidbar, Ve'ela toldot Aharon u'Moshe, and then we see the children of Aharon are written down. Comes Rashi and tells us that because Moshe Rabbeinu taught the children of Aharon Torah, they became his children too. There's no doubt that the Torah that every single girl in Machal learns is her Torah also. The thousands of Torah homes that are being built, the thousands of Torah homes that Be'ezrat Hashem will continue to be built, are also hers. Yehi Zichra Baruch. Is Chana Levitan here, or we're going to... Okay, so I guess I'll call Mrs. Zilchar. Should we do the Kel? Okay, so then Rabbi Yehuda Pinsky should come up. Okay.
Say Perek Tehillim, and then a Kel Mili Rachamim. Shir Amalot Mimamakim Kraticha Adonai Adonai Shema Bekoli Tiyena Oznecha Kashuvot Lekol Tachanunai Im Avonot Tishmoria Adonai Mi Yamod Kimcha Slicha Liman Tivarei Kiviti Adonai Kivta Nafshi Veledvaro Chalti Nafshi Adonai Mishomrim Laboker Shomrim Laboker Yachel Yisrael El Adonai Kim Adonai Chesed Varbei Mofedut Vehu Yivdet Yisrael Mikol Avonotav El Malei Rachamim Shochein Bamromim Hamitzei Menucha Nechona Kanfei Ashchina B'ma'alot Kedoshim Utorim Kezohar Arakia Mazirim Et Nishmat Zahav Rivka Bat Gedalia V'Shulamit Shehalcha L'Olamah V'avor Shebri Neden Yitzen Tzedaka Bad Askarat Nishmata Lachen Baal HaRachamim Yastirea B'Seitek Knafav Le'olamim V'yitzror B'tzror HaChaim Et Nishmata Adonai Hu Nachlata V'tanuach b'shalom ha'mishkava v'nomar amen.
Mrs. Esther Zilcha to come and say a few words, remembering Linda. Aleh Shalom.
Shalom uvracha lekulam. To begin, I want to give kavod to the memory of Rav Kuperman Zatzal, who established Michlala and this Machal program that has been dedicated in the memory of Linda, Zahava Rivka Pinsky, by her dear parents who knew Rav Kuperman well, and he had a fine friendship with them. When Linda, Alea Shalom, learned here at Machal, Rav Kuperman Zatzal had given many shiurim on the Perush Meshech Chachma ala Torah. Rav Kuperman's devotion to his students and the way he taught brought the Torah closer and made it more meaningful for all his many students to live a life of Torah and mitzvot. Tovli Torat Picha Me'alfei Zahav V'Chesef. We also knew him very well. He was such a very, very special person. And I don't know if any of you came before that you had the opportunity just to see him. In the Sefer of Nehemiah, at the end of Perek Bet, Nehemiah saw the great need to rebuild the crumbling wall around Yerushalayim, which is yet from the destruction of the first Beit HaMikdash. And Nehemiah did this in order to protect the Jews living there during the time when they were building the second Beit HaMikdash, Bayit Sheni. In Perek Gimel, there are almost 30 psukim which give us detailed lists of names with an explanation of which section each of these people did when rebuilding the wall. Each section of the wall was built by different people, and each name is mentioned. These names remain for all time for us to see in Sefer Nehemiah. The first to start rebuilding was Eliashib HaKohen HaGadol ve'echav HaKohanim. In the last pasuk in Perek Gimel, pasuk Lamed Chet, Vanivne et HaChoma Vatikasher kol HaChoma ad chetzia lev la'am la'asot. Vatikasher. It was joined together. They, the builders, were like a long chain who joined together the parts, the sections of the wall, to build a protection for the present and the future generations. This is what has been made possible by the dedication of the Machal program in the memory of Zahava Rivka, Linda Aleh Shalom, that her dear parents established. May it be blessed to remain for all your futures this true foundation and depth of Torah learning which each of you are getting here at Machal Michlala in Yerushalayim, Ir HaKodesh. Now about Linda Aleh Shalom. I'm grateful for this opportunity to speak about my niece, my first niece, Linda, the firstborn of her dear parents, my oldest brother Gedalia. May he be blessed with good health and strength from HaKadosh Baruch Hu to continue all his chesed. Amen. Our dear Linda, Zahava Rivka Aleh Shalom, a special young lady with very fine midot. Linda spent her year at Machal over 30 years ago, at a time when it was not common to come for a year for studies as it is today. There were only a few programs for women in Israel then, and Michlala, Machal, was truly the best of them. There were 83 students in the Machal program that year. Looks to me that there are more this year. Linda went on to Barnard, which accepted credits only from Michlala. At that time, a year in Israel was a much different experience than it is today. Not from the viewpoint of learning, but from the viewpoint of living the year, being far away from home. Today we take for granted phone calls, emails, pocket cell phones. When Linda spent her year here, cell phones didn't exist. There weren't emails. And making a phone call was very expensive. You had to go to the main post office on Rehov Yafo, and you would put down $5, $10. I think $10 gave you 3 minutes to talk to America. And you gave you $10, and when the 3 minutes were up, the phone went quiet. It was finished. That was it. You were just cut off in the middle of your sentence. I know, because I used to go to tour. This meant Linda didn't have access to her parents, to her relatives and friends back at home. But you take for granted today. The result was greater independence. When you can't call or email mommy every day, you have to rely on your own strengths and develop new strengths. How many times a day or a week do you call back home? I had made Aliyah and got married here in Eretz Yisrael, Baruch Hashem, 9 years before Linda studied here. When at Michlala, Linda used to visit us often. We had been living in Yerushalayim. She was full of fun. During her year, my sister and Chaim and their family made Aliyah. And in the summer, my dear parents, her Baba and Zayda, Alehem HaShalom, were also able to make Aliyah. And my brother Yehuda and Becky then also came with their family on Aliyah. So whenever she came again to visit in Eretz Yisrael, which she was zeicher to do, we were here for her. Linda was a good-natured child, and that quality remained with her as a young lady. She had a special goodness and a lev tov, something deep within her. That year of her studies here in Yerushalayim at Michlala, she had many maturing experiences, ones that gave her opportunities to show her character, how she was working with friends, studying, and showing much thoughtfulness to those around her. In my mind's eye, I see Linda with her smiling face, her laughter with our children. She visited often. When my mother, Aleh Shalom, had a birthday, Linda wrote a cute poem where she wrote how her Baba used to keep herself so busy. We shared much laughter. Linda also had a lot of friends, Israeli friends here from the Michlala program. Linda spent Chag Sukkot with us, and on the second day, for us it was Chol HaMoed, but for her it was Yom Tov LaGaluyot. So she was very careful about Shmirat Mitzvot. Well, we used the elevator to go up, but Linda walked up the steps. Linda was very attached and devoted to Eretz Yisrael. She walked to the Kotel from here on Chag Shavuot to be part of the people here in Yerushalayim and to feel the special closeness of Har HaBayit. I know, because then she had quite a long walk to get back to us. I mentioned Linda's fine midot. Linda was a wonderful sister. She showed much love and devotion to her brother and to her sister Barbara, who was 2.5 years younger than her, who had gotten married. And I felt her true simcha for her younger sister. And Barbara, Baruch Hashem, has been blessed. Towards the end of her year at Machal, Linda called home and told her parents that she was interested in staying for the summer to take an innovative course here in computers at Michlala. They agreed, and that was the start of her direction to the field of computers, which she majored in at Barnard and worked at AT&T when she graduated. The field of computers is not what it is today. It was then in its infancy. This was before the PC home computer. There were no Microsoft Windows. And if you ask some of your grandparents, they'll tell you how it was then. And she got into the field, like you say, on the ground floor, and she loved it. During that summer of computer courses, Linda became friendly with a few Israeli students, which gave her another opportunity to get to know other parts of Israel, besides the areas where she had family. And she became closer to Eretz Yisrael. Michlala had a double effect on Linda. Besides her Limudei Kodesh, which she, Baruch Hashem, excelled at, she also got the start of Limudei Chol, Torah im Derech Eretz. בפרקי אבות, פרק א', משנה ו', יהושע בן פרחיה וניתאי הארבלי קיבלו מהם. יהושע בן פרחיה אומר, עשה לך רב וקנה לך חבר, והווה דן את כל האדם לכף זכות. This is how I feel always about our Linda. She was happy with people, and those around her were happy with her. I don't remember her sitting and talking about things that didn't please her. She had an eye that saw good, and she had special kibud av v'em. One of the hardest things for parents who have lost a child is the feeling that their loved one is at that age every year, afterwards again and again, still remaining at that age. Friends of hers who still keep in touch with the family, they, Baruch Hashem, have been blessed to continue to marry, to have children, to educate and bring them up, and Baruch Hashem, to bring their children under the chuppah. Linda Aleh HaShalom battled with leukemia and had been doing well. The family planned to come with her to the bar mitzvah of our first son, our oldest son. She had gotten fever and had to be hospitalized. Linda was a brave young lady. We're not able to understand the ways of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, but we have much emunah. If I were to think what Linda would have liked to bless all of you wonderful students at Machal each year, I feel she would say to you to have strength to enjoy and accomplish and grow with the love of Torah and Eretz Yisrael. Linda should be a Melisat Yosher, Aguta Beita. There should be no more sickness, and Mashiach should come B'karo b'mheira b'yameinu. Amen.
I have heard Mrs. Zilcha speak for many years already, because there's no one now who's teaching in the Machal program who knew Linda Aleh Shalom, and we realized it would be appropriate to have someone who know her, and this is, I don't know how many years that she's been speaking, many years already. Each time it's a moving event, and certainly for those who hear it for the first time, it is certainly so. Let's see if this is going to work the way it should. Would somebody pass some of these out, please? No, didn't show. Okay. Let's see. You know how to turn this on? It's on. Okay. Maybe turn off a light or so. Yofi. All right, a couple lights so you can see what's here in front of you as well. Excuse me. That's too many, I think. All right, just a little bit. Make it darker. The nice people who set this up, I prepared this, but they said my coloring wasn't good for screening, so they said they made it better. So we shall test them soon to see if they did. We have the opportunity for the next number of minutes to talk about issues which are lifelong issues for everyone, but in particular lifelong issues for a Torah Jew. And the fact that they are lifelong issues does not make them bad in the least bit. The fact that they are lifelong issues means that our lives has vitality. They have vibrancy. We always have opportunities to grow. And the word challenge isn't a frightening word whatsoever. Rather, it's an opportunity to make decisions and to behave the best way that we can, to decide the best way that we can, and then sometimes when we err, because that occurs as well, then to figure out what we're supposed to do. So therefore, the title of what we're talking about, engaging the outside world, challenge, opportunity, and confrontation, the word confrontation is at the end for a very simple reason. Not everything is a confrontation that has a connotation, something which is evil, something which is troubling, but we'll talk about the challenge and the opportunity as well as the confrontation. There are 3 stories for you. Okay? You read it? This was, can see it? Okay, this was sent to a girl who, Baruch Hashem, married, has 2 children now. But as she was finishing her undergraduate studies, applying for a graduate study in a psychology program in a certain university, and she was invited for an interview, this is the email that she received. My name is Brian, and I'm a first-year graduate student at the university. Congratulations on being offered an interview to the clinical program. We're going to be having a pre-interview social event on Sunday night. This is a relaxed, informal time where you'll get to meet the current graduate students, your fellow applicants. Hopefully relax a little bit before your interview on Monday. We'll be going to a bar called Black Sheep from 6 to 9. Boker Tov. Story number 2. This is more recent. One professor of mine is fascinated with Judaism. He married a Jewish woman and is a self-professed Buddhist. Real world, ladies. I couldn't make these up. He struggles with his religious identity and often makes fun of anything Jewish during class. I usually laugh it off because he doesn't actually want answers to his questions and he isn't willing to listen anyways. Another Jewish girl in my class, is a frum girl, another Jewish girl in my class tries to engage him seriously when he starts poking fun, and it almost always ends badly. I usually have to step in to tone things down because the professor gets worked up and the girl ends up out of her league. He's not very knowledgeable about Judaism, but he is eloquent. Somebody else. Did I skip one? Yes. They all sound the same a little bit, right? These are different people, different teachers, different schools. Not all secular schools. My psychology professor is Jewish but doesn't seem to like Judaism at all. Today, and I don't know why it came up, he asked why Jews can't eat shrimp and lobster. They're not studying fishing. And once he got started, he also wanted to know what's the deal with milk and meat. I gave him the simplest answer, that we do so because that's what God told us to do, to live the most fulfilling life, and those are laws that we follow. But he kept pressing me for a more specific answer. I told him I would email him a more complete response. He was satisfied, but he reminded me that I have to email him, and that's why he got the letter. The 4th story, of which there could be another 100 more, the sociology teacher got upset that someone said anti-Zionism is anti-Semitism, and wanted to discuss the relationship between the Abrahamic religions and who is at fault. Real world, ladies, modern times, not things before there were cell phones, not things from ancient times, things that maybe have occurred all the time, but in certain ways, in my impression, far more sharp, far more challenging, far more dangerous than things that I experienced when I was your age. We're going to talk about the following aspects that deserve to be talked about. We won't cover them all at least, not in the least bit. There's simple parts. Okay? There's halacha issues. What do you do when there's class on Yontif, on Chol HaMoed? Negiah type things. It's not Hilchos Negiah. People tap you on the shoulder, shaking hands. Amir Lakum, can you tell the goy to take notes for you on Yontif? You didn't tell the goy to take notes for you on Yontif, but they're nice people, and they take notes for you on Yontif. They give it to you. That's a little bit of a problem. What happens when your Jewish classmate knows that you're Orthodox, but they're not Orthodox, and then they take notes for you on Yontif? Teaching Torah to non-Jews. Lashon Hara. Okay? This is not moving, right? It moved. Okay. Philosophical issues. Creation, evolution. Who wrote the Tanakh? I love this following quote. I saw it, I think, someplace in the New York Times. This is something which all of us should have ambitions to be like. Discordant with cultural norms. I don't fit in. I don't fit into the society that's on the outside, that's ever-changing, that doesn't have standards that they believe in, that doesn't have things that they believe in that are everlasting, that don't have things that they believe in that even last for a decade or 2 decades or 3 decades. Everything goes which seems to be appropriate. But then you feel left out. What do you do when in your class or talking with people whose values are so different than yours that you don't know how to deal with it? And there's Israel. Treatment of Arabs, wars, what's the BDS? Boycott, divestment, and sanctions means put punishments on Israel. For those of you who read the newspapers, there is somebody who's not evidently too much of a contender for the Democratic presidential nomination, but the people who he appoints to sit with the Democratic committee to decide on what the platform of the Democratic committee is supposed to be for the elections in 2016 are people who are BDS supporters. What type of atmosphere do we want to create for ourselves? Shabbos Hayom is a quotation from Maseches Yuma, in which the Goyim make fun of the Jews, and it exists today 100%. I can't come to work. I have to leave early. It's Friday. It's the winter. And next Monday and Tuesday is Rosh Hashanah. And next Wednesday is Yom Kippur. And then the Monday and Tuesday afterwards is Sukkot. It's Shabbos Hayom. What do you do when you're in places with other religious Jews, but their standards aren't your standards? They're Shomrei Shabbos, but their dress standards aren't the same as your dress standards. Their interpersonal behavior isn't the same as yours. And they say to you, you're a religious Jew, they're a religious Jew, why is there such a difference? You're in school, in a program which is a small program, and there's social groupings, and they want people to get together. You have to study with groups of people. They're not necessarily, or very likely, not the same ilk as you are. What do? And of course they want to get together because there has to be, in Ivrit, what we call a gibush chevrati. You want to set up appropriate social relationships, and so you go into whatever bar that was named. That's where people meet. What do you do when people in your surroundings speak inappropriately? Nivel peh, inappropriate discussions. All of us know what that means. Socializing with Muslims. I can't tell you how many girls who I think, especially it's in my mind in Queens, said to me, wrote to me, I want you to know there's some religious Muslim girls in the class. I'm more comfortable with them than most anybody else. Our dress is similar enough. They don't hang out the way everybody else hangs out. Anti-Semitism. Okay. We're going to learn a bit of this, and this is the pages that you have. We're going to learn a little bit of Makorot. They're going to help direct us, at least in some of these issues, of how we are to respond to difficult situations. And the first is a Mishnah in Pirkei Avos. Rav Lezer Omer, have a shakud l'mod Torah. V'dama shetashiv la'apikoris. You have to work hard for Torah. Parshas Hashavua b'chukosai telechu heyu hevu amelim b'Torah. Work hard. But the point that we're emphasizing here is dam asher tashiv la'apikoros. You have to know how to answer people. Says the Gemara in Maseches Sanhedrin, Amar Rabbi Yochanan, lo shanu ela apikoros nachri. You have to work hard to answer the Goyish apikoros. Aval apikoros Yisrael. But if you give an answer to the Jew who's an apikoros, kol shekain depakar tefei, he's just going to make more fun of it, he'll be even more hefker, and he'll make bad use of what you say. Says the Medrash, the bottom 2 lines that are underlined, ve'afal pikein tzrichim anachnu la'ashiv l'ksilim. On the other hand, you can't keep quiet all the time. There's people who say foolish things, That was one of the letters that I just read to you. And they're eloquent, so that really sounds good. It really seems to make sense for people who don't think, because it sounds nice. And so certainly, no matter what, you can't ignore the ksilim, the people who are foolish. Mishum anek ksil kivalto. If you don't answer the fool according to his foolishness, ken yeh chacham beinav. Ken yeh chacham beinav. He's going to think he's right. And not only will he think is right, what are all the people who are around? What are they going to think as well? But who do you answer? There's a wonderful little sefer that people don't know about from Rav Kook with all sorts of small ideas. Usually a paragraph. This is 2 paragraphs. Do young women have an obligation to answer and be mekarev men? And do men have an obligation to be mekarev women? Says Rav Kook, Midat hatzniut zocha. Midat hatzniut is on such a level that its merit is lidchot mipaneha devarim shayu tovim mitzad atzman, to push aside other things that might be inherently good. If I have something to tell someone which is correct, why shouldn't I share that with him? After all, lo nimnat tov, we shouldn't refrain from sharing that which is good with others. But that value, which is an objective value, takes second place, says Rav Kook, to the midah of tzniut. But because people's yetzer and sometimes people's weak inner strength, it might cause the breaking down of barriers of tzniut, because that's the existence that not just that the physical world exists on, but the spiritual world as well exists on. So therefore, I can't always have the conversations, the deep and the special conversations with everybody else, if it breaks other barriers which have a higher value. So I'm in a place, and people are mocking, and I'm not comfortable, because nobody that I know likes to be made fun of, and likes to be the center of attraction. I'd like to sit in the corner, wear my kippah, mind my own business. I travel, I have to be in the airport putting on tefillin. I don't do it in the middle of the hall. I find some type of corner that I'm able to do so. And the beginning, when I was traveling, before I traveled a great deal, I davened as fast as I could. I wasn't happy. Now I'm used to it already. But I still stand in the corner. It says the Shulchan Aruch in the beginning of Orach Chaim, don't be embarrassed. What do we say in davening? What do we say in davening, ladies? V'lo nevosh. It's part of our tefillah. It must be such a natural tendency not to be comfortable when there's other people who think that we're doing it strange or even mock us, that the Anshe Knesset HaGadolah had to institute that a tefillah would be v'lo nevosh. Shows you what a challenge it is. It says in Mishnah Berurah, Lo yitbayesh b'bnei b'nei adam, v'al kol panim lo yitkateti mahem. Don't fight with them. Mipnei shemidat ha'azut. Rav Kook told us one midah. The Mishnah Berurah tells us a second midah. To be brazen, to talk back to people, muguna ma'od. It's very bad. Don't ever use it. I'm speaking for God. I'm God's defender. So I'll talk back to the person who makes fun of me and I'll say, don't you know how wrong you are? Because if you use a midat azut, if you act brazenly, if you act with chutzpah, even in a place when it's correct, because then a person will acquire that trait of speaking back brazenly. He says to look at the Bir Halacha, who makes a distinction, which we're not going to read now, if it's public. What do we start off with? To a Jewish apikoros? He's just going to get worse. Keep quiet. But if you don't answer them, they're going to think they're correct. And if they're speaking in front of other people, they might convince other people about the correctness because who's going to refute them? Especially when they speak eloquently. But I have to be careful how I answer other people because I don't want to ruin my own midos. I can't act with brazenness. I can't act with chutzpah. But says the Mishnah Berurah, al haTorah. But there's an organized group of people who want to combat Torah, who want to fight Torah. All this isn't said, he says. Okay? The last line, Lo diber Rabbi Yosef me'uma. That's not what I wrote in the Mishnah Berurah is speaking to. How am I supposed to do it? What's the challenges? And the ideas that we're going to read now are at the core of whatever we're going to say and not say. But there's an attitude that here that we're going to see that has to be instilled in us to know what we're supposed to do. When do we talk? When are we quiet? It says the Chovos HaLevavos, the Iyun. V'amru Raboteinu, let's start from the beginning. Heve shakud lomod Torah v'dam asher tashiva apikoros. The Iyun shar shiudu lanu ha'omot b'malot ha'chachma v'bina. But the goyim are never going to be convinced what we're saying is true. They're never going to say, what you're saying makes sense. Ad she'idu lanu hara'ayot v'amofatim. Ve'idei ha'seichel. Unless we can speak logically in such a way that is clear like edut, v'ya'idu, is clear like edut. I'm saying testimony, something which is irrefutable. If I can't say something which is irrefutable, ala mitat toratenu va'omen emunatenu, that the Torah is true, that our beliefs are true, if I can't speak that way, they're not going to be convinced. So I have to speak, not just to say, as the nice young lady wrote, I told him that it's God's will that we don't eat shrimp or lobster, or whatever she talked about there, which of course is true, but if I want to make a point to the other person, they're not so interested in Ritzon Hashem. I don't know they're interested in any answer, but the answer of Ritzon Hashem isn't enough. I have to be able to talk to them b'malot ha'chochma v'abina, in terms of wisdom and understanding. And says Rabbeinu Bachi at the Parshas Re'eh, Hama'amin mitzad HaKabbalah. Those of us who believe as we should because we have a Masorah. Emunah tovahi mi'achar she'HaKabbalah mitit. Of course it's correct. We have a Masorah from Moshe Rabbeinu from Sinai that tells us not just the specific halachos, but informs us of what we're to believe. Aval ein la shleimut. But emunah is not shleimut in and of itself. Lefi she'ein ba chochma. Because it doesn't show wisdom. Im yishma divrei hatuim ba'kofrim. If I hear people who err, or people who are, toim doesn't mean err. Toim means that they get lost along the way. Toim with a tet means err. To'eh b'derech means that they get lost along the way. V'hakofrim eino batuach batzmo. I'm not even sure of myself. Think for a moment, ladies. Think about situations that you yourselves have been in. Not necessarily confrontation about Torah, but other situations that you've been in, and you talk, and you talk, and you talk, and you don't know what you're talking about. You ever been there before? Anybody not been there before? We won't embarrass you by the one person to raise their hand. In Ivrit, there's a wonderful word that I didn't know in Chutzlar, but I learned here. When you keep on talking and talking, it's lehit chaper. You're digging yourself deeper and deeper and deeper, getting into more trouble. Some of you, when we have things to work on Kibud Avein, might be having a discussion, let's say, with your parents, and they tell you you know they're right, but you don't want to give in because it's not an issue of right and wrong, it's an issue of power struggles. And you keep on talking and talking, and you know you're being, more stupid every second that you're talking. We all know what I'm talking about. Beseder, have with loved ones, we all love and hug and kiss afterwards, everybody's very happy. I'm in a situation where people want to denigrate Torah. I'm in a situation where Torah is attacked. And not only don't I have the information in a sufficient way, what's the language here? Eino batuach ba'atzmo. I'm not sure about what I'm saying. And it comes across. It comes across in the words that I say. It comes across in the tones in which I say it. And it comes in the but I think anyway, things like that. Aval, go down to 3 lines. Hapikeach. If you want to be bright, hu batuach shelo yikashel. He'll be careful that he won't err. Shalem ba'atzmo. He's going to be satisfied with himself. He'll be self-confident. Shalem ba'atzmo means self-confident. The last line. Lachein yitztarech adam shelo yaspik lo inyan emunato mitzad HaKabbalah bilvad. He can't rely just on emunah that comes through masoris, bilvad. It's part of it, but it's not alone. אלא שילמוד ויחכם עד שתשתלם אמונתו, תהיה לו אמונה מצד הקבלה ומצד הידיעה. A two-sided emunah. One is a Masorah, and one is that I know it's true. I study, and I learn, and I understand. V'al zeh amru Chazal, have a shakud l'mod Torah v'dam asher tashiv le'apikoros. You can't tell this apikoros through the Kabbalah. You can't tell them that's what I was told. It's true. It's 100% true. And the Rebbe Shalom is happy that we have this. But if I engage myself in a conversation with somebody who wants to doubt, or somebody who really wants to know, somebody who's sincerely interested in understanding. The vignettes that I gave you weren't people who are interested in understanding. But there's many people who would like to understand. And all I can say was, that's what I was told. That's wonderful for when I stand Shemon Esrei. That's not a conversation I can have with somebody else. That's what the Chovos HaLevavos said. That's what Rabbeinu Bachya says. Says it Tosa Shantov, one of the major Meforshim on Mishnayos, on that Mishnah in Pirkei Avos. V'dam Masha Tashiv, the second line. Amar, he quotes the Rabbeinu Al-Mushinyono. Masha Tashiv La'apikoros da'ehu ata. You know what you're going to say. B'yediyah shleima, with complete knowledge. What you should say can't be a tshuva that you've heard from other people. Mekubelet, lashon kabbalah. I read a book and I'm just quoting the book, but I never thought about what the book says. You're not going to be successful. You won't convince anybody. And what's this pasuk that we talked about in the middle of the page? Altan ksil kivalto. Don't answer a fool like his foolishness. Pen tishvelo, because maybe you'll just be like him. He's a fool, and you talk foolishness. Sag l'chachma shtika. Anei ksil kivalto. But answer the fool according to his foolishness. Pen yeh chacham beinav. How do you have the two things? Isn't it paradoxical? Don't answer him, and then answer him at the same time? Says the Malbim at the top of the page, Mitzvah shalolomar davar sheno nishma kadome. Don't say anything stupid, something which nobody's going to listen to, which doesn't sound reasonable. Binyan shel yaner ad sheishkol b'libo. Till you think it through yourself. Ad sheishkol b'libo. Shikul dat. I balance things. I don't only think what I think, I try to understand what the other party is going to think as well. I try to put myself in their place. If I ask such a question, either because I was a person who was cynical, or because I was a person who didn't know, would the answer that I'm giving now, would that satisfy me? That's a test that the Malbim says we can give. Says Rashi, hundreds of years earlier, V'tam shnei psukim elim meforash b'tocham. The psukim aren't paradoxical. Understand what they say. They're self-explanatory. Al tam b'damar shetishvelo. Don't answer in a way that you're going to be like him. If he says something foolish and your response is just as foolish as what he said, then tishvelo, then you're the same as him. Im tanehu, but if you're going to answer him, anei ksil b'davar shim lo tanehu yeh chacham beinav, then you have to answer in such a way that you take away from his sense of self-importance, from his sense of being knowledgeable, from his sense of what he's knowing. So as we're going to talk for the next number of minutes here, go through this list with which we began a number of minutes ago, and go through the list again. We're going to have in front of us a motto. Don't be the ksil. Don't be the fool. And there's a problem. Because there are so many things to know, you don't know everything. I certainly don't know everything. And I'm in situations where I'm requested or required or expected to know everything. Many of you, particularly if you go to secular colleges, or if in the workplace, you'll become the rabbi, even though Michla doesn't give smicha. Okay? You'll be the rabbi. No question about it. Okay? Your skirts, your sleeves, etc., early Fridays, make you the rabbi whether you want to be or not. And that puts you in a predicament, because sometimes you're expected to know things that you don't know. Or often you're expected to know things that you don't know, even though you believe in them. But belief isn't sufficient. This first part is very simple. I think this isn't the big challenge. Okay? You don't go to school in Yom Tov, okay? Have to leave Erev Shabbos. It's difficult. The first year that I went to secular college, I was still in yeshiva. The yeshiva had a couple of years of college in the yeshiva, so I didn't have this problem. Yom Tov was on, if I'm not mistaken, Tuesday and Wednesday. So no school Monday night, no school Tuesday, no school Wednesday. And it was right at the very beginning of the year. Then Rosh Hashanah, then Yom Kippur, then Sukkot. Lo pashut. Lo pashut. But kach. In the first letter about going to the bar, so the girl who wrote them was engaged. Her husband asked her Rosh Hashiva from the Rosh Hashiva Yeshiva University what to do. He said, you can't go. Tell her she can't go. But he said to her, but this might be an important part of getting into graduate school. What can I tell you, he said. That's what it is. Nivia. I'm now not going to talk about handshaking. Handshaking is a serious issue in the modern American place, as well as in Israel as well. Okay? The starting point that is, it's also, but sometimes there's things to talk about. People have questions, can ask me, but that's not a conversation for today. What is a conversation for today is casual touching, as they say, which exists in the world. Whether every time somebody taps you on the shoulder you have to hit them, I don't think so. But sometimes, yeah. If the touching gets a little bit too long, you have to say, excuse me. And one of the things, if you're in such a situation, is to learn how to say things for yourselves without being embarrassed and turning red. That's a challenge. I'm an Orthodox girl. This lack of self-confidence is a very problematic issue. Because there are not nice people, in this aspect and in other aspects as well, who take advantage of a lack of self-confidence. So when a person knows that they're going to be in a certain circumstance, a person decides correctly they're not going to shake hands for itself. Okay? A person decides at a certain point there's too much casualness. And we're not talking about terribly bad people. That's a separate issue, which we're not going to talk about, but people then have to know how to take care of themselves. You've heard these things throughout the year and before this year. People have to protect themselves. You have to know how to talk for yourselves about things that you really believe in. And because it's so different from the rest of the world, it's easy not to be comfortable saying it. And I turn all shades of red, and I bow my head, and I whisper, what'd you say? Because you can't even hear it. These are things that we believe in. We have to get used to saying them with pride and with confidence. Not with gaiva, not with exaggeration, not to make a point, just that I can look people in the eyes and say, that's not how I do things. And in many, many cases, my impression is in most cases, from conversations that I've had, although I don't know statistically, people who say it nicely with self-confidence, and they're dealing with other nice people, and there's many nice people in the world, it works. It only has to be said one time. The same thing is about conversations and usage of language that are inappropriate. Whether it's nivel peh per se, or it's sexual conversations, things like that come up. Okay? If a person says, please don't talk that way, I'm not comfortable with this situation. So a couple people will try to find out if you're really not comfortable. And they'll try to take advantage of it, because that's what occurs. If you do it without being embarrassed, without shame, without turning red, then most people will catch on. Few people won't, but most people will catch on. I'm willing to sign on it based on experiences that I've had with all sorts of people. But I have to know how to say it in a way, because if I'm embarrassed saying it, then the not nice people will just say it just to get you more embarrassed, because they like seeing people being uncomfortable, because whatever type of abuse that is, that's the type of abuse it is. Teaching Torah to non-Jews is a serious issue. It's a very hard issue to say. I have a tshuva here which I didn't decide not to put on from Rav Avad Yosef, which isn't the Chiddush per se, but it certainly is an issue when you have non-Jewish friends who want to know why you do things in a sincere way. So it's a big problem, Because the Torah says, Torah Sivalanu Moshe, Morasha Kilas Yaakov, and Chazal teaches Morasha, like the word Morasa Erusin, the Torah is wedded to us. And as the Torah is wedded to us, so therefore there is a certain intimacy that exists between Am Yisrael and its Torah, that those who don't want to be part of the Torah, we're not talking about Gerim, people studying to be Jewish, those who don't want to be part of it have an issue coming in. It's a challenge. I don't want to make light of it, and in situations, in social situations with nice people, it's hard to know what to do all the time. That's why you can ask questions, but it's an issue. Okay, the halacha is very clear. Rabbi Ovadia Yosef writes it in a clear way. Asur l'lamed Torah l'goy, bein Torah shebichtav, bein Torah l'shebal peh. V'gam l'daber imo b'divrei Torah asur. V'chol shekein shasur lichtov lo dinei ha-Torah mitzvoteha. V'chein asur limkor l'goy sefer kadosh, k'mo Tanakh v'chadome. You're in situations that make this halacha very difficult. I don't minimize it because you don't want to appear unfriendly, nor should you wish to appear unfriendly. You don't want to appear aloof, nor should you wish to appear aloof. You don't want to appear there, and you're not going to tell them, I can't teach you Torah because you're a goy. Right? Well, I think we all understand that's not an appropriate thing to say. So the more that a person can minimize and say there's other books, that's a person should do so. What I gave you was not a whole complete answer, and I'm aware of it. Lashon Hara. It's also to speak Lashon Hara. How many Isurim does the Chafetz Chaim write in the Sefer? 39? No? Like 39 Makos? 39 Melachos of Shabbos? That's the Chafetz Chaim has such a tally. It's also to speak Lashon Hara. Lashon, okay? When I'm speaking the To'elet, it's not Lashon Hara. To'elet means I can give benefit to someone and save them from having a problem based on my knowledge. How's this teacher? Everybody says he's no good, she's no good. I hear that's terrible. It's an Isser of Lashon Hara. I'm not saying that the Isser of Lashon Hara about non-Jews is the same as Jews, but there's no mitzvah to speak Lashon Hara about anybody. A person who's gossipy, just like we saw in the Mishnah Berurah, like brazenness, if you're gossipy, you're gossipy. Lo selech rachil. If I have something objective to say, I'm allowed to say it. If there's a teacher who's inappropriate, and this applies more in people who go to religious colleges, there's a teacher who's inappropriate, and it occurs, and the teacher could be a Jew, could even be a from Jew, it's a mitzvah to tell. It's a mitzvah to tell. Whether it's a language, whether it's a type of conversation that's there, which is irrelevant to that which is being studied, or whether it's interpersonal things, it's a mitzvah to tell. It's a mitzvah d'oraisa to tell. Not just you're allowed to. Because in Lashon Hara there's no gray areas. It's either aser or they have to say it. If you want to talk about creation, evolution, authorship of Tanakh, okay, major issues are gender issues these days. None of you remember, I might have said it in another conversation here, or maybe I said it last year, in 2002 or 2003, you're all babies at that point, then who was the president, Clinton was the president then, I think, and he signed the Sanctity of Marriage Act. And marriage meant that men married women. Doesn't mean that anymore. Doesn't mean that anymore whatsoever. That's a serious challenge, because in the schools that you're going to, even in some of the religious schools with certain faculty members, and certainly in the non-Jewish schools, there's big issues. If you're going to a secular college now, you don't know who's going to be using your bathroom. President Obama said a law that transgenders can choose which bathroom they use based on how they decide that morning it's not right to speak to them school. How they decide which gender they belong to. So somebody is physically a male, but decides that he's a girl. He's allowed by, I'm not sure it's federal law yet, but he's allowed to use a women's bathroom. It says so. It'll be in public places, all public spaces. It's going to be like that. No question. Okay? By the time, in another 20, 30, 40 years, there'll be a pendulum. It'll come back. People are going to get smart and they're going to reject all this. But for the next 20, 30, 40 years, there's a big challenge for people to reject these things on all bases. But if you say so in class, you'll be mocked. Why can't people choose they want to be? They have their own identity issues, etc. It's a big issue. There's not too much that's written in Torah in the modern times that we could use as kelim to explain the Torah approach. I'm not saying they would agree with it anyway, but there's very little that's used. I just saw recently a letter, which I didn't have here, which I can find for those who want it, from the Lubavitcher Rebbe Alav Shalom, okay, speaking about these issues. Maybe he died. The Rebbe died over 20 years ago. So 30 years ago, teaching about these issues when the word transgender didn't belong to anybody's vocabulary that I know. And people with, as they call, same-gender marriages, or SSA, same-sex attraction. That's how it's called in psychology. Okay, those terms, I don't know, and everybody understood that they were wrong. Individual people might have their own issues. We're not talking about individual people now. We're talking about a societal, cultural norm. So the Rebbe wrote 30 years ago, already understanding these things, okay? Let's say, he says, that the person has a tendency. There's people who have tendencies to be murderers too. That's what the Rebbe wrote presciently 30 years ago. But it's an issue because there's not much speaking about it. There's not much that's written about it. And unfortunately, many of you already, maybe still now, because you've grown up in the society, in the open American society that you've grown up in, that some things are acceptable, and maybe it's not clear to us all the time what's right and what's wrong. If you want to test yourselves, if your thinking is correct, not that you can give me the answer, the Torah says this is asur. Everybody knows the answer. But if you want to check yourselves, because if you can't convince anybody else of something if you yourselves aren't certain about it, ask yourselves when these conversations come up, does the Torah have to be defensive, or do they have to be defensive? Who's on the attack? If I have to say, well, the Torah is bad, the Torah respects people, but the Torah is this and the Torah that, that means the Torah has to defend itself. Once I put myself in such a situation and they don't agree with Torah, then I'm saying the Torah is on the low ground, and the main societal norms are on the high ground. If I have to think that way, which maybe, if I do think that way, which maybe some of us do, then I owe myself some clear thinking. How I express it to other people is an issue of tactics. What I say to myself has to be the Torah Supreme. That's not clear to me. And I know, I'm not talking about anybody here in particular, but I know I talk with all sorts of high school teachers, or my students at one time, that there's many people from these issues are not clear at all. Kiruv is a mitzvah. Somebody who wants to be frum, it's a mitzvah. But like all other mitzvahs, there's halachos. There's halachos. Can I invite somebody to my house on Shabbos when they drive? Almost all poskim say it's asur. Can I give somebody food when they haven't said a bracha? My Rebbe, Reb Aaron Soloveitchik Zatzal, when I had friends, I wasn't involved in this, in the mid-1960s, when there was a big movement of missionary movement, Jews for some other guy whose name starts with a J. And my friends started on the campus for boys in Skokie, campus of Yeshiva, Jews for Judaism, a drop-in center. They were really way ahead of the game. I wasn't zochah to be smart enough to be part of it, but they were ahead of the game. And to be hospitable, they wanted to invite people in and to serve drinks, to serve cookies, to serve drinks, whatever they were serving. Rosh Yeshiva said it was asur. They're not going to make a bracha. They were uncomfortable telling people to make brachos. Avram Avinu told people to make brachos. Not everyone agrees with that opinion, so this isn't the psak halacha. I'm giving you an example. You're on the bus in Israel, and somebody sits down to you, next to you, a chiloni person, as they call them, and says, they want to ask you a question. Something in Judaism, they're asking, they want to understand. Rav Zilberstein Shlita, one of the great poskim of our time, son lover of Elyashiv, one of the great rabbanim in Bnei Brak, says if they haven't said Birchos HaTorah, how can you talk to them in Divrei Torah? Life is complicated, ladies. There's no question about it. Whether you think yourself that you're a big Zionist or a super big Zionist or a medium-sized Zionist, that everyone who's going to be in the outside world has to be aware of position to support Medinat Yisrael and to be well read about it. Simpler than halacha, but there's a lot of people against it. Okay? In almost every case, anti-Zionism today is anti-Semitism. All you have to see, you live here, so you don't see the news, you don't see CNN, so you're separate from all that goes on in the world this year. But you see all the anti-Israel demonstrations that exist in campuses, they turn anti-Semitic and ugly. Swastikas being painted on rooms. Israel speakers coming, being threatened, not being able to speak. These are things that each of you will stand in the forefront for Medinat Yisrael. No choice about it. It's a little bit insular. You don't have to know Mishnah Bruas, and etc. But you have to find places to read. There's one place on the web started from Bar Ilan. What's the one called from Bar Ilan? You know what I'm talking about? Remember, from Bar Ilan, there's a place that speaks very well. Okay, what? No, not stand with us. It's an intellectual thing that gives facts about things. I don't remember it from Bar Ilan. I have to look for it. Honest Reporting, which got it started from Mesha Torah, has all sorts of things. I'm not talking about silly things. I'm not sure should mention the silly places, people who I agree with, but they just speak silly because all they say things is that we all agree in. Okay? I will give you a speech today. We should all be Shomer Shabbos. If you all agree, thank you very much. Have I done anything for the world? Absolutely nothing. I have to be this intelligent person that we learned about already to think about how other people are going to hear things and how they're going to understand them and how they're going to process them, not to say things just that I'm convinced about myself. And not all of us have these skills. Very few of us have these skills. If you listen to the radio in Israel and you hear the interviews that they do, which are often antagonistic, you'll hear that all sorts of people, from people, sometimes Talmidei Chachamim too, don't know how to talk to other people. V'adif lehem hashtika. And there's a few people, Baruch Hashem, there's a few people who know how to speak to all these people. We'll mention the names of the Rav Rashi, Rav Lau, Father Rav Lau in particular, Rav Grossman, other people like that who know how to speak. Rav Legershal, one Chaver Knesset who is particularly intelligent, know how to speak to the people. Okay, he knows how to speak. Not all of us know how to speak to it. If I'm confronted, I don't know that I would know the right answer to say all the time. And if I'm confronted in an aggressive way, maybe I would get nervous because I wouldn't be comfortable being interviewed, and the questions would be attacking questions. Maybe I would not be comfortable, and even those things that I know, maybe because I would be nervous, I would forget what I'm saying. But these are all aspects that we all have to face. Yep, let's go back. How are we supposed to have ideas to know what to answer? First, we have to examine ourselves. We have to find ourselves when we come in situations, and I read things, say to myself, what would I say in such a situation? How would I answer it? Am I convincing myself? Do I have something that would be persuasive to other people? I also have to learn to say without being embarrassed, I don't know. I have a cold, I have a virus, I'm taking an antibiotic, I also don't know why it works, but I'm taking it. I can refer you to a place where you can read about it if you want to know about it, but I don't know. But once I start giving half answers about things that I know, or quarter answers, and the person with whom I'm having the conversation with is an intelligent person, and he asks me a question which I can't answer, better that I shouldn't have started. Don't start something, says the Raavad in Hilchos Teshuvah, Perakei Halachei of Mishnah Torah. Don't start an issue that you don't know how to complete. So sometimes keep quiet. I'll find the answer for you. I'll refer it for you. And if we talked about Apikorsim, who Kol Shekain de Pokar Tefei, if they're Jews and they're just out to make a point, whatever you say to them might not be helpful. But the Jews who care and are interested in learning, and there's lots and lots of them, ladies. Lots and lots of people who are interested in learning, who would want to understand. I'm not saying they want to become Shomrei Shabbos. I'm not saying they want to be Shomrei Kashrus. But maybe they'll have a value of appreciation for Torah. Maybe they'll have a value and appreciation for the way that we live. And maybe if they take that evaluation and that appreciation, they'll see the difference between themselves and the non-Jewish world, and maybe they'll marry a Jew. And if it's a woman, then the child is going to be Jewish, and maybe they'll be in a situation that they'll introduce their children to some Jewish schooling. It happens all the time. It happens all the time. There are people who are motivated. And at the same time, there are people who are anti-motivated. If you talk to people who are the generation of the older people here, of our parents who grew up in America, this wasn't the situation with my parents at Lipshaw, but was a situation where I've heard from many, many people. People in the 1930s who were growing up, and it wasn't cool at all to be Orthodox, and many of the people who came from Europe still were foreigners, and people were embarrassed about them. That was a fact of life. Whether they should have been embarrassed or not is irrelevant. And they had some type of Jewish education with Jewish teachers, Hebrew school teachers, who were incompetent at being Hebrew school teachers. And because of their incompetency and their frustration, they would hit their students. How many people went away from Judaism because of such a negative relationship that they began with? The tikkun that we can do is to make it a positive relationship. Is one of friendship, is one in trying to find out information, those who care to know, and it's easy to discern between those who really want to know and those who don't want to know. Those who don't want to know, they don't want to know, but those who want to know, to put them in touch with the people who can help them, give them that information. There's all sorts of nice programs where people learn chavrusas. On the phone, they learn chavrusas from people. There's all sorts of people, and all of you have ksharim with people here, and hopefully in other places as well, to give you guidance of the things that you're able to do. Some of the things that you're able to read. There's all sorts of nice books that are written today, which I wrote here. Lots of things are in English, and that you can choose for yourself the things that you like. You can choose for yourself the things that you like. Different styles, things that are expressed, but they're expressed in an intellectual way, they're expressed in giving ideas, and they're expressed by great people, and I have a right to choose from them. Not that I'm deciding who's right, who's wrong. Elu ve'elu, we all know that answer. But I certainly want to know what I can use, which is good for me. Because that will instill in me the self-confidence to talk to others. There's books now from Rav Hirsch, whether it's on the Chumash, whether it's the 19 letters, whether it's Chorev, from the Rav Soloveitchik Zatzal, from my Rebbe, Rav Aaron Soloveitchik Zatzal, from Rav Lichtenstein, Rav Kellerman, who's in the Vey, Permission to Ask, Permission to Believe. Thank you. Very nice books. The problem, the lack in these last books is that they don't bring enough sources. Rav Hirsch is all sources, the Rav is sources, my Rebbe Baron Soloveitchik is sources. These books, which are based on, some of us are learning together, Sefer Ikarim, it's based a lot on Sefer Ikarim, but the sources aren't there, so therefore the ideas are certainly true. Whether they will engage us enough, whether they'll engage us enough to share with other people or not, I don't know. Okay, Dr. Tatz has written. Kiva Tatz has written many books. There's the Thinking Guide to the Guide to Thinking Jewish Teenagers, something like that. Very sharp book to the point. He's written many things. Unmasked World, World Unmasked, based on teachings from his Rebbe. The schus that we have in Beit V'Ganter of Moshe Shapiro Shlita. But a lot of those things are on a certain level that are kind of hard for people to understand. The Guide to the Thinking Teenager, whatever it's called, is things like that. And to look for those books that speak to us. Because again, if they don't speak to us, if I'm just quoting something that I haven't thought through, I haven't internalized, when I come to the person who's going to ask me a question about it, it immediately collapses. I'm speaking in the name of Rav Hirsch, let us say. I'm speaking in the name of the Rav, let us say. I'm speaking in the name, and I give them an introduction. Do you know who Rav Hirsch was? Do you know who the Rav was? I give such an... Look him up on someplace in the encyclopedia. You'll find who this great person. And I make his Torah worthless because I don't present it in the right way. Not only have I not helped the other person, I've been mevaz of Rav Hirsch, mevaz of the Rav. In a certain way, it's a chilul Hashem. Because what's a chilul Hashem? If that's the Torah, it's pretty meaningless. That's what a chilul Hashem is. What we've had today is an opportunity to think about all the issues, about many of the issues that exist. To know, number one, to be aware that they may confront us. To know, number two, that for many of us, on some of these issues can be challenging, that allow us to strengthen ourselves, to gain the necessary knowledge, to gain the necessary personal growth in terms of self-confidence, of being the person who I am, to represent things and to express things, to have enough self-confidence to know when I don't know and then not to answer, and also to know what the confrontations are, that sometimes I know to meet them, and sometimes I disengage, and sometimes I separate myself from them, because that's part of a mature responsibility and response that every one of us has. The world outside is part of the Bria. And just like there are things in the Bria that allow us to live, there's oxygen, and there's water, vital aspects of our existence, there's also poisonous snakes. At a certain part in life we have to know them, what we can do, what we can engage, what we can imbibe, what we can share with others, and what we have to do to remember that when two people are walking in the desert, says Rabbi Akiva, and there's only Gemara in Bava Metzia Daf Nun Tes, this week's parsha, and there's just one bottle of water, the choice of my survival or not my survival, then I choose to survive. But Baruch Hashem, in most of the instances that we have, I don't have to make such a dire decision. I can choose to live and to exist. I can choose to survive and bring other people with me. It all depends on ourselves, our self-reliance, our self-confidence, and the person that we are. If I'm able to take that neshama tahora and bring it out in the open, then undoubtedly it's going to have an effect on ourselves and all those that surround us. Batzlacha, ladies.
Someday I'll tell you about my experiences in the neighborhood.
Thank you.
We got any friends with you?
That's the way you do it.
Oh, right.
And you can walk that way.
Thank you for coming. We'll be in the shop.
Okay.
Girls, everyone's invited upstairs to the Charocha for lunch. Although we ran late, we are still starting at 1 o'clock. Shira Smiles is at 1 o'clock, and we want to end on time so everyone can get into Chesed on time, and Mrs. Hirschman, optional speaker after that. So go up to lunch now, and make sure you're back here really at 5 to 1, because Shira Smiles and Mrs. Shem will start at 1 o'clock.
That's why I said some are religious schools too. I said it.
It's going to happen. And from there it went on, and this person is no longer Shomer anything. He'll eat pig on Yom Kippur and marry a Shiksa. I hope he won't marry a Shiksa, but it's come close a few times. Okay. So here's a little more closer to your heart. Okay, so meet Rina. She was a student here in Mechala. And then she went to NYU. Okay, some of the details haven't changed. Rina's asked to join a study group for her pre-med chemistry class. Knowing that things are great on a curve, competition's steep, she decides she should join, even though she has misgivings about studying with guys. After the test, the group decides to go out to celebrate. Rina's uncomfortable not being a team player. Her friend Sarah, who's less observant, cajoles her. If you don't go, you're sending the message, I'm better than you. You're good enough to study with, but not to party with. So Rina decides to go just once. Okay, she's also taking a literature class. Professor has required some reading that Rina finds highly explicit and inappropriate, but she's uncomfortable saying anything or objecting. When asked to make an oral presentation on the subject, she likewise feels she has no right to refuse, and finds herself speaking to her class about subjects that would never have entered her thoughts, let alone her speech. Time progresses, Rita gets more comfortable with the looseness of culture on campus. She wonders whether tznius is necessary at all, or whether it just suppresses women. Okay, so I'm presenting you, obviously I'm presenting you the worst cases, right? And I forgot to start with my caveat, because what you've probably been exposed to more or less are people who've gone through, prestigious secular universities, less prestigious secular universities, and their emunah seems to be perfectly intact. So I'm telling you, it's not pashut at all. It's not, you can't make, deductions because you see someone who turns out okay, that the whole process is okay. It's extremely dangerous. It's like playing with fire. And you see here that there are devastating stories. And then these are not the only three. I don't know what the percentages are. I'm sure someone has done a study at some point. And to make you aware of the challenges that exist on a sliding continuum. So even though I'm presenting the worst case scenarios for you, like it wouldn't be far less interesting for me to describe to you, the small chips away at my personal emunah that I experienced over the course of my academic career. That wouldn't be and it wouldn't even affect you as much. But my point is that everything I'm telling you here, it affects people on a continuum. Okay, so how does this happen? How does this happen that someone who's ostensibly coming from a strong background and a strong place, what happens? Right? Can you imagine this happening to any of your friends, your close friends, the people who you've grown up with and who have, exhibited, certainly your peers in Mechala? You can't imagine it happening. So I'm going to tell you what I think, I'll break it up into categories like intellectual challenges and social challenges, but I think it always works together. It's really not, there's no such thing as like a purebred apikoros today. There's always a mix of things that affect someone who deteriorates religiously. Okay, so let's talk about the intellectual challenge. So the atmosphere of the university, and this is true for the world also. Again, everything is kind of exaggerated in the university. So more than head-on collisions, things like, they say the world is 16 billion years old, and we say it's, about 6,000. So those actually, I don't think they really send anyone too far off the derech, those kinds of things. There are many accomplished from people who have worked out satisfying answers to these type of conflicts. If you should encounter them and they should bother you and you should care to look it up, there's the things that are less obvious and therefore much more dangerous are the undercurrents, the assumptions, the climate. Okay, so this is Dennis Prager. You guys know who he is? Okay. I spent last week at college, not just any college, Stanford University, and this is what I thought. If you wish to learn the facts, university can be a great place. If you wish to study the natural sciences, university is a great place. But if you want to acquire wisdom or become a mature adult, university is usually an impediment. You eat there, socialize there, study there for 4 years, read the newspapers, and rarely watch television or listen to the radio. In fact, for more than a few students, the university environment is not all that different from that of a cult. As a student, you're well-fed, live among fellow impressionable young people. The only adults you encounter are there for the most part to shape your thinking. Other adults and other ideas are largely kept out. Okay, listen to this. This is Woodrow Wilson, and he's, this is from an address describing what Woodrow Wilson said, a commencement address at Dartmouth. Someone once asked Woodrow Wilson, when he was the president of Princeton, what the function of a liberal education ought to be. So, by liberal education we mean what all of you are going to college for, right? Wilson replied, to make a person as unlike one's father as possible. I like that answer. What he meant, I think, was that a liberal education ought to make a person independent of mind, skeptical of authority and received views, prepared to forge an identity for himself or herself, capable of becoming an individual, not bent upon copying other people, even people as persuasive as one's parents. Okay. Here's another one. So this is Richard Rorty. I think he died. It was probably a positive development. He was he was very influential in education, and he was a philosopher and professor at Wellesley, Princeton, University of Virginia, and Stanford. Okay, he's got a storied career over here. When we American college teachers encounter religious fundamentalists, that's us guys, we do our best to convince these students of the benefits of secularization. The re-education imperative is one that I, like most Americans who teach humanities or social sciences in colleges and universities, invoke when we re-education imperative. We invoke when we try to arrange things so that students who enter as bigoted, that's you guys, homophobic, religious fundamentalists will leave college with views more like our own. The fundamentalist parents, those are your parents, of our fundamentalist students, that's you, think that the entire American liberal establishment is engaged in a conspiracy. The parents have a point. We are going to go right on trying to discredit you in the eyes of your children, trying to strip your fundamentalist religious community of dignity, trying to make your views seem silly rather than discussable. I think those students are lucky to find themselves under the benevolent Herrschaft, that means domination, of people like me, and to have escaped the grip of their frightening, vicious, dangerous parents. Does this sound normal to you? Okay. That, he was talking about the social sciences, right? Like he said, listen to what they say about the sciences. He's never chayid, mistama. Stephen Weinberg, professor of physics at MIT and Harvard and University of Texas. Okay, these are not random, people over here. These are serious professors. I personally feel that the teaching of modern science is corrosive of religious belief, and I'm all for that. If scientists can destroy the influence of religion on young people, then I think it may be the most important contribution we can make. So how far have we come? The Rambam, who says, when you're bizboinen niflos habriya, you come to Avas Hashem. And look at this. Study science so that we can discredit religion. Okay. Another one. But what was fascinating about this one, I'm not going to read all of them to you, it's from the journal called Evolution. It's a prestigious scientific journal. You know, like scientific journals, like they're all peer-reviewed and all that stuff? And this is all about how, we have to kill religion in order for evolutionism to prevail. Really remarkable. Okay, so what's the point, and how can you? First of all, you need to know there's an agenda out there. That's and whether it's explicit or implicit, and whether people even know that they have an agenda. The quotes that I brought to you are obviously people who recognize the agenda and are pursuing it, with vigor. But there are people who don't even realize that this is part of the system. So, what are the components that create an environment where people get sucked into this? So, the first thing that you'll find is this emphasis on critical thinking, which critical thinking is really important to some degree. We don't want robots. We don't want automatons. You want people who know how to question and find out the emes for themselves. But in the university, this is taken to a ridiculous degree. If it doesn't make sense to you, it doesn't make sense. Finish. I'll give you a really good example of this in a few minutes from my law school class. So the problem with this is if the buck stops here, at my understanding, there's really no place for intellectual humility. So you see this in the writings of our Chazal, and certainly Rishonim Achronim. There's a certain submissiveness. Like if I don't understand it, tzarich Iyun. It's not good. It's like I need to understand it better, which that doesn't exist when you're approaching. And perhaps it's not even as warranted when you're approaching secular. It's certainly not as warranted when you're approaching secular chachma. But the feeling that everything can be discredited because I don't understand it is extremely dangerous. Okay, so this Lichtenstein explains when he talks about the conflicts that arise between Torah and Mada. He says, surely we hold that if indeed at some point, at some level, faith and reason, Torah and Mada collide, then it is the Torah, Aktuva v'hamasura, text and tradition, which prevails. But he acknowledges this is, of course, frankly illiberal. Regarding the series of pashtos of liberalism, the foremost being that there's no authority, moral or intellectual, higher than one's rational perception. This is very dangerous. I mean, I don't have to spell out why this is extremely dangerous for a believing Jew, but if you get to the point where if it doesn't make sense to me, I'm not there, that's like the antithesis of Nasa v'nishma. So you're in pretty bad shape. There's also another undercurrent, so distrusting authority. Right? We saw Woodrow Wilson, liberal education is supposed to make you skeptical of authority and received views. So you realize what this does to someone who, a faith that's built upon emunas chachamim and authority. And then there's also this bias against anything conservative or traditional, with the exception of very, very, very few universities. So this is from, I actually have this for you guys. Where's mine? Yeah, when you're ready you can take, this is a really interesting back and forth between Professor Kohlbrenner, who actually lives in Beit Vagan, he teaches at Bar Ilan, and Rav Lichtenstein. So he writes that the contemporary university, what were once considered the classics of Western literature and philosophy, are now often used as the mere markers of prejudice, power, and oppression. In this sense, texts of the past are not looked to as a means of potential instruction and guidance. That's what we do with our text, right? But as evidence of how much the cultures of the past failed to live out the ethics and ideals that our current generation has allegedly perfected. This is then not merely a question of curriculum change. It's not what you're learning. It's how you're learning it. But a major shift in the way one relates to text, traditions, and authorities. So it's not about, sometimes it is about what you're learning, but it's often about the approach to what you're learning that becomes extremely dangerous, because it becomes automatically, like osmosis, it becomes automatically imported. Your brain is trained to think differently and approach things differently, and then that can, unfortunately, cross the line into Kodesh. So here's my, okay, so we took, in law school, I took this class. I didn't take it. This is a shopping period, like you guys have here in Mechala. So my criteria for my classes were like, it had to be in the morning, and no required reading. So this fit the bill. I didn't really care. Otherwise, I didn't really care what I took. So I sat there the first day. What do you think the topic was? Family law. Good guess. Divorce. Close. Child protection. These are like normal suggestions. You'll never guess. What? Same-sex marriages? That would be also a very, that would be, I wouldn't have been surprised if same-sex marriages was the first topic of the conversation. Okay, the first topic of this conversation was, okay, now it's just artificial, right? These are the legislators of tomorrow sitting in Harvard Law School. They will be writing your laws. They probably already are. This is 15 years ago. Okay. What does that mean? I'll tell you what it means. Two consenting adults should be able to make a contract about anything they want. My rights as married, unmarried shouldn't be defined by anyone, certainly not the legislature. If we wanted to, the same way you enter into a business agreement, and there's a clause that provides for a dissolution, I should decide what I want my rights and responsibilities to be. Why should someone else tell me what they are? Comforting? Right here, that's the alternative, what I just said. Okay, so what do you see here? So this is like, hey, I'm 21 at Harvard Law School. I know what's best for society. Hello? Marriage has existed for centuries. Did you consider the possibility that it's like a important piece of the fabric that holds like society together? No, I'm 21, and I got into Harvard, and so it doesn't make sense to me. And the tradition is irrelevant, and authority, why should the legislature decide what I want? Okay, suffice to say it didn't stay in the class. I was sitting next to my husband. We're not staying here. We're going elsewhere. We'll take tax law or something much more normal. Okay, so wait a minute. You're going to say to me, but like, wait, isn't the university all about diversity? Did you have to do like your essays all about how diverse you are, how diverse how you value diversity? Right, so I'm telling you, diversity is all about superficial diversity in the university. A true diversity of ideas does not exist. Does not exist, period. And I want to show you here. Academia is simultaneously both the part of America that is most obsessed with diversity and the least diverse part of the country. On the one hand, colleges bend over backwards to hire minority professors and recruit minority students, aided by an ever-burgeoning bureaucracy of diversity officers. Yet when it comes down to politics, they're not just indifferent to diversity, but downright allergic to it. Evidence of the atypical uniformity of American universities grows by the week. Okay, there are some statistics about how many professors in all universities donate towards like the Republicans versus the Democrats. It's like 2% Republicans and like 98%. It's very, very, very slanted. Okay, 9-1, it said here. Debating chambers are becoming echo chambers. Students hear only one side of the story on everything from abortion, good, to the rise of the West, bad. Bias in universities is hard to correct because it's usually not overt. It has to do with prejudice about which topics are worth studying and what values are worth holding. This is where it gets very dangerous, because it's not a head-on collision. It's this subversive, it's not even worth discussing. It's not even worth considering. This was a news story that caught my eye. Someone who was suing the university because he claimed that and he had all this support, he claimed that he was being failed for taking the wrong position in his paper. And I knew this in law school. I knew what the professors wanted to hear, and I knew when I took my finals, I was just there to get the grades. I wrote exactly what they wanted to hear. Totally not in sync with what I thought the policy should be. But I know what they need to hear, and it was so clear that you couldn't. I'll tell you in a minute. I think I have it over here. A story from class. I had one conservative in my class. There were probably a few, but one vocal conservative. Oh, here it is. Okay, so actually, this is like the one movie I've seen in the past 20 years. It was called. There was like two people in the theater, me and my husband. It was called Expelled, No Intelligence Allowed. It was a documentary about how different professors were losing their either tenure or professorships because they were using different scientific evidence and devoting part of their study to challenging the limits of evolution. It was like a 2-hour film, and it was so nauseating to see that it's not about intellectual honesty over here. Because these were not people they weren't like evangelical Christians. These are professors who are doing scientific studies and trying to explain why, evolution can't explain all the answers. And summarily dismissed, and, money being pulled from their projects and being denied tenure. Anyway, just to show you that academia is not a very fair place. Okay, now here's my example from constitutional law. Now, actually, I said I didn't really care about any classes I took, but you have to take constitutional law. Makes sense. But I did care about what kinds of professors I took, because there was like a limit to what my stomach could tolerate. So I chose the Iyun. There was no conservative choice, I would have, but he was like the even-handed professor, like the non-bleeding heart liberal, so we decided that would be acceptable. Okay, so we get to, there are a lot of hot topics, heavy topics in constitutional law, and one of them is abortion. I shouldn't say abortion, I'll call the actual only constitutional issue really is whether, the constitution we were dealing with was whether a state has the right to make illegal a procedure called a partial birth abortion, which is something I think after the 23rd week of pregnancy, this is the 5th month of pregnancy, the fetus is already, debatably viable, whether a state can ban such a procedure. The Supreme Court said, no, the states cannot ban the procedure. It's illegal for the states to deprive because it's a constitutional right. Okay, that's the background. So the professor obviously is on the abortion team because that's the good team. If you're pro-life, you're on the bad team. So the way he presented it was as follows. You're going to laugh. This is Harvard Law School. Okay. So imagine one morning you woke up in the hospital and you were connected by wires to a famous violinist. And he was living off of your, blood, whatever, imagine. And if they tell you, you have the choice. You can stay connected and give this person life, or you could disconnect because you don't owe them anything. So, what do you think? Do you know what this is supposed to be a mashal for? Okay, so someone, super duper intelligent in the class is like, but wait a minute. In the mashal, right? In the mashal, so you just woke up and, but, in the nimshal, you had to do something to get there. No, that's not a problem because we have another mashal. This is Harvard Law School. I'm not joking. Okay, imagine the way people were born was something called people seed. And there were these, invisible airborne particles that would happen if you had anything that was porous in your home, like a carpet or a sofa or even a sweater. So they could come in through the window and just sprout, and that's how people were born. And so you don't want any people being born in your house, so you get some, like the special screens that they sell to make sure that the particles don't come in, but you need to live like a normal person, and you have to have a wardrobe, and you need to have a couch, and you have to have carpet. That would be ridiculous to be living without that. So, but you try to keep your screens up and everything, and then one day there's a person growing in your living room. So it's just like the mashal, just like, you know, you're connected to the violinist. Okay, this is what's being presented. Now, I said I had one vocal conservative guy in the class. So he starts, you know how the Supreme Court decisions are, if they're not unanimous, there's like the opinion part with like, you know, most of the justices say this, and then there's usually a dissent where 1 or 2, 3, or 4 justices say this. So he was reading from the dissent. Okay? It's describing, this is a partial birth abortion is a gruesome procedure where they basically have to dismember this fetus. So he said, you know, Professor, I'd like to inject some reality into this discussion, and he starts reading from the dissent. And this professor shoots him down. He says, we're not going to get carried away with inflammatory language. Inflammatory language? He's reading from the opinion. That was when I had it. I was just like, this is too much. So that's what I mean, that there's one view that's presented over and over again in lots of different forms, and it's presented as the only view. And should someone suggest that there's another view, or, you know, heaven forbid, give voice to such a view, he's shot down. Okay. What happens? Okay, so you can imagine, if these aspects of the intellectual climate seep in, so we don't trust Rabbanim anymore because that's authority. Anything traditional is unenlightened. Conservative is the wrong side of the coin, it's intolerant. Adherence to a system of halacha, chukim, it's primitive, it's absurd. Religion is for the uninformed, the unvarnished masses, you, fundamentalists, living in the dark of their incomprehension and fantasy of fairy tales. That's what happens. To varying degrees. It's a sliding scale. It's not all or nothing. I would challenge you to find me someone who went through a liberal secular university who never once questioned their religious beliefs on any one of these indices. You won't find one. Okay, here, these are old statistics. I'm sure they didn't get better since then. 65% of students question their religious spiritual beliefs at least occasionally. 18% do so frequently. 38% feel disillusioned with their religion to some extent. Okay, my parents schlepped me to my university. This was my kibbutz avim with Erev Shavuos. I didn't want to go. I was already not even living in Boston. I was living in New York. But, you know, my parents wanted their nachas, so we went. I'll never forget this speech. I found it on Google afterwards, you know, because I remembered it. So this guy gets up there. He's the undergraduate addressing the university. And he has this, like, thick Southern accent. I doubt that I was the first farm boy accepted to Harvard University, but when I arrived in Cambridge, you certainly could have fooled me. Fresh off the farmer's tractor with the farmer's tan and a head full of Republican idealism, I fancy myself as quite the moral authority. My ideological heroes range from the wide political spectrum, including Rush Limbaugh and Ronald Reagan. I was all for intellectual diversity, so long as I was always right, and the right was never wrong. After being nailed a few times, I started to rethink some of my intractable positions. Okay, applause. Maybe conservatism doesn't have a monopoly on the truth. Applause. Maybe homosexuality is not a choice. Applause. And if it is, maybe I don't get to make it for other people. Louder applause. Maybe I needed to rethink the way in which I treated the opinions of others. Okay, myself, a former member of the NRA, I had been wielding my opinions like a 10-year-old who had just found his dad's gun. But opinions change, people change, despite my own conversion to moderation. He did not convert to moderation. I still sometimes listen to Rush Limbaugh, although I no longer take notes. So this is the success story, right? You take this closed-minded bigot and you turn him into Mr. Harvard. Okay, this is what potentially could happen, and now this is what it looks like for a secular person. But you can imagine this is what happens to a religious person who decides to abandon religion is definitely due in part to to the intellectual climate. Okay, so how can you survive such an environment? Okay, so first of all, a healthy dose of humility, acknowledging your limitations always helps. Because when you realize that you're young and impressionable and you're not as educated or as articulate as the people speaking to you, you automatically, it's like a very good salt shaker. You know, it's a grain of salt already, because you understand that you're not on equal footing, so you don't take it in the same way you would otherwise. A second suggestion is to insulate yourself, and you shouldn't be afraid to avoid coursework. This is not, we're not scared of the truth. We're scared of agenda. We're scared of people presenting things in a way that makes it seem that there's no other choice. We're scared of people who want to make our ideas seem silly rather than discussable. That's what we're scared of, and there's good reason to be scared of it. So you should avoid all coursework that would touch on, and this, you need advice for this. And this goes for every university, including Turo and including Stern. You have to be careful because you don't know who's teaching and you don't know what they're teaching. And if you want to make sure that you won't be affected, you have to be careful. And the third thing is that, like I said, these things are not as dangerous when you're talking to people. If they would stay in the realm of secular chachma, shine, there is progress in secular chachma. We're not going to deny that. But we believe Torah is actually working in the opposite direction. The real danger is when you take these modes of thinking and acquiring knowledge and approaching knowledge and chachma, and then they're transposed to Yiddishkeit. That's really dangerous. So look at this Rambam, and if you find yourself in an environment like this, you should put this on your wall. Okay, so this is Halchas Me'ilah. Me'ilah, you know, is taking something that was intended for the Beis HaMikdash and using it for a purpose, for a profane purpose, for chol. Like taking an animal that was hektish and riding on it is a serious isser. So Rambam says, a person should involve himself in understanding the mitzvos and their ta'amim to his ability. Look how stringent the Torah was when it comes to the isser of me'ilah. And we're talking about in objects, right? An object, a cup that you said was hekdesh. And it just became hekdesh because I said it's going to be the Beis HaMikdash, this cup. And it's so chomer to use it for divrei chol. Nizkadshu, they became kodesh. V'chol hanoig behem minhag chol ma'ol b'Hashem. And it's a serious isser of me'ilah if you use that cup for anything else. V'afilu hayashogig tzarich kapara. Kal v'chomer, l'mitzvah, shechakag lana kadosh baruch hu. Certainly, Kal v'chomer, it's true for the mitzvahs that Hashem gave us, shelo yivat adam b'hem mipnei shelo yidat taman, that he shouldn't reject them or have a negative attitude towards them because he can't fully understand them. V'lo yachsho b'hem machshavto b'divrei chol. And the way he approaches divrei chol, that's like an aspect of the Isser of Me'ilah. He should never use those modes of thinking to approach mitzvahs and Torah. I'm not insulted. I know you guys this is last minute and you have schedules. Okay. So, what else to do to survive? It's important to have someone you can talk to, someone you trust and respect, that when issues come up, you have a sounding board. And the second thing, and this is really true for all of you, you shouldn't let school consume you. You have to leave room for learning Torah to stay connected cerebrally, that's where you're being challenged, and keep your consistent commitments even though your schoolwork might be significant. And you should stay focused on your goals instead of getting lost in the sea of academia. I've seen this happen a few times, and it's very unfortunate, especially when it happens to women, because their future seriously, I don't think it's a shaykh to anyone here. You know, just going for my master's in this and my PhD in that and astrophysics and Russian literature. You know, people lose their bearings, and then their future gets all confusing. Okay, those are the intellectual challenges for now. Let's talk about the social challenges. Okay, you could read, I'm not going to say. Okay, you won't find this in Turo. You won't find this in Stern. But you will find, again, on a continuum, definitely different levels of social mores. Okay, peer pressure can be very intense. Here, these are excerpts from people's emails. I feel the need to constantly reinforce my religious identity and regularly guard myself from pleasures and enticements. Sounds kind of biblical and melodramatic, but a battle is what sustaining a religious persona on a college campus really is. I don't drink, but it seems all of my friends here drink. It's all they ever do. So it's, we're always defining ourselves by our surroundings. So depending on where you are, and that what I just said is true for anyone. You have to make sure that you really want to be doing what everyone around you is doing. You have to take checks on yourself, and don't just go with the flow. Okay, so often, depending on where you are, but in these types of situations, girls who end up Princeton, UFP, Brandeis, wherever it is, they're usually they're not with a strong social network. So you're in a minority, and you don't have people who are like you. So what happens is either you have to decide it's okay to be a little lonely for these few years, it's a price I'm willing to pay for my education, or whatever the reason I came here in the first place, or they end up being in unacceptable social situations. So if this is shaykh for any of you, there's an excellent pamphlet that my husband's chavrus at the time, he was an MIT and UFP graduate, two of them, they put together describing the different specific social challenges that come up on campus, which I'm sure there are more by now, but I'm happy to email it to you if you want. Okay. So how do you survive? Okay. The first thing is, I don't know where everyone's story is, but to live on campus in a secular university, that's really like a death wish for your ruchnius. If you could, any way to live off campus, and people could be really creative about this. I was a dorm counselor in a girls' high school. I know people who boarded. One of my students, went to Harvard, and I set her up with a family. She lived with them. Hey, it was annoying. It was a commute. It was a this. It was a that. But school was school, and home was home. Once you make the divide, and school's not everything, you're in much better shape. Okay. There you go. No, what happened? There's more. Okay, next. There was more. No? Oh, I started from the beginning? End the show. Go down. Current slide. No? Alright. Let me see what I said here then. I don't know what this... Okay. Stay connected to people who strengthen you spiritually. So if it's someone in Mechala, if it's a high school teacher, if it's a brother, a sister, a parent, it's important for you to keep up that connection. And it's good for you anyway to make a code of red lines that you're not going to cross. I won't. This is amazing. A Mechala girl from about, 4 or 5 years ago, she was going to Cooper Union, and she came back the winter break, and she was telling me all about it. She's a great girl. And she told me I was shocked at this gather she took upon herself. So her name was Shoshi. Everyone called her Shoshi. But she decided that she was going to be Shoshana, not Shoshi, because with her, the male counterparts. Not only that, she would not give her phone number to any guy. Work-related, whatever it was. So she said it was very uncomfortable sometimes. One time this guy was doing her a favor by, I don't know, she missed class for whatever it was. Someone was sending her notes, and he wanted to work out when he could. And she said, I'm sorry, I don't give my phone number. She was so stark. It was such an impressive gather. Because if you make a gather like that, for sure you're not going to end up, hanging out and going out for coffee and whatever happens after that. Then, our friend Rena over there, she was so nervous about saying what she thought. What are you scared of? Be firm about your commitments and don't shy away from stating them outright. Next, find positive social outlets, and this is good for all of you, whether it's chesed, or organized kiruv, or community kiruv. If you're going to be in a place where you don't have a good social network, so you need to create a positive spiritual, social atmosphere for yourself. And then in any area where you're nervous about being weak, take on an extra gather. So I had a friend, it's actually Mrs. Hilowitz's sister. We were the same year, and she went to Barnard, and she decided no slits. She wasn't going to take on that gather for tznius reasons, but she decided no slits. She needed an extra gather in tznius. She's going to place with priestess. She wanted extra tznius. When I was in law school at Harvard, I decided no shaitels. I'm wearing snoots. That was my gather. No one should think I'm normal. And it worked. No one thought I was normal. Well, the pregnancies gave that away anyway. But it was another gather. When I was in college, so there was a kosher dining hall, which probably wasn't too kosher, but I don't know, they told me it was kosher, so I listened. And so, everyone would sit and talk and schmooze, and there were mostly guys there, because, then there weren't too many girls. I went to Yale, so I didn't want to talk to them. So I used to sit with my headphones, listen to Rabbi Beryl Wine. I know so much Jewish history from then. Loved it. But that was my way of I'm off limits. Don't even bother starting a conversation with me. You want to call me aloof, you want to call me non-social. Send a hype. But it was good for me. And the last thing is that you have to daven. This is for everything. Especially anything that you're nervous about, that you understand is on your radar. You have to realize davening is not only because Hashem listens, it's also for you. You constantly remind yourself, what do I need to be aware of? Where are the dangers that are lurking? What do I want to be stronger in? You should just have a lot of siyata d'shmaya. If I could be of help to any of you in any way, then you can feel free to email me. You can get it from the office, or you have it probably in your yearbooks. If any specific issues come up and you think I'd be an address, by all means. You should have a lot of hatzlacha. No, that's Larry Hirschman. He doesn't like getting my emails. Oh, you did see it up there? Oh, because you see that. I didn't realize that you had that too. I just assumed if the... Okay. Oh, that worked. Okay. I assumed if the slideshow wasn't working. Okay. Amazing. Thank you. And if anyone wants the PowerPoint,